Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
Sibling Rivalry by F.J. Bergmann, with music by Fog Machine, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. Hotline. The tone of voice on the end of the line was guarded, but definitely not bored. The vid screen showed a young man in dress green uniform, but with no discernible rank displayed. The response came from someone panting heavily, either from immense effort or pure stress. Listen very carefully. Rip apart your chain of command and get this directly to the president. Now, right now. There's a saltwater variant. It's gotten loose in Los Angeles harbor. She has to order a massive nuclear strike on the harbor immediately, or we lose the oceans. You can't be serious. That would take out... His tone was more emphatic now. My friend, I'm calling from Skyla, the research vessel in LA Harbor. How much more sincere do you want me to be? I've got the passcodes. I know you've got my retinal scans and voice ident matched, and I have the necessary clearance. I figure we've got maybe 80 minutes. Go. The vid screen temporarily blanked, then rippled abstractions wandered across it, to the rhythm of a Sousa-derived earworm, for less than 20 seconds, until the scowling face of a considerably older man replaced that. Dr. Sabato? A grating voice greeted the caller. Let's have it. The caller repeated the essence of his earlier communication, at much higher volume, and with lavish use of expletives. I see. Well, that's not an order I'd care to have to give. What if it's in contact with the freshwater entities? They're set to spawn within the week, and there's no way to eliminate all of them in time. Even if the ones we know about are all that exist, which is extremely unlikely. Twitching arm movements suggested that, off-screen, the man was rapidly stabbing at his control pad. They have no loyalties except to their own progeny. We've determined that conclusively. What is the matter with you? I and my colleagues are ready to sacrifice ourselves, and you're hesitating? Are you some kind of squirm lover? I'll do what I can, Dr. Sabato. Immediately. And know that your sacrifice, and that of your colleagues, has my profound gratitude, at least. The hands reaching for an adjacent control screen were trembling slightly, and not with age. The Oval Office was still decorated in shades of blue, as it had been for over 50 years. But the current office holder had demanded that the ceilings be adorned with a painting of fluffy clouds and a flock of fat cherubs wielding thunderbolts, fluttering around the presidential seal medallion in the center, to correspond with her religious views, which held that all divine smiting was delegated to underlings who frequently erred, resulting in the basic unfairness of the universe. She sat behind the historic Resolute desk, which had been fitted with an enormous black glass touchscreen that covered most of its surface. Her fingers trailed idly across it. She had been considering the news from the West Coast for 5 minutes of the 80-minute countdown, during which the Skyla's report had been independently confirmed. Her interlocutor stood at parade rest before the desk, a small muscle near her mouth twitching slightly. Some elaborate throat clearing, then, Madam President, I do not believe we should undertake the course they ostensibly recommend. The president placidly moved one of the antique pens on her gleaming desktop a quarter inch to the left, picked up her own cut crystal glass of water and took a sip, waving towards the tray with the decanter, extra glasses, and ice. You better have an extremely convincing explanation why not, General. Those missiles are armed and activated, are they not? Yes, ma'am, they are. There are at least a dozen nuclear-capable missile-carrying submarines within range in the Pacific. The grizzled veteran sighed, her breast still lifting proudly under the holographic plaque of medals and ribbons decorating her ceremonial body armor chest plate. But there's something fishy, if you'll pardon the expression. The squirm siblings may prey upon each other. Goodness knows we've got evidence of that. But each parent is extremely protective where outside predators are concerned, and their ability to determine responsibility for an attack is uncanny. Remember the reservoir episode? They didn't go after the hazmat team. They went into the fresh water supply system and took out the entire County Department of Health Administration. And also the CEO and board of Monsanto, which had developed the pesticide that was used. What are you getting at? President Vaughn's fists clenched on the padded arm of her chair. We have no time for this. The general leaned forward, her craggy hands planted on the edge of the desk. 3 things. 1. If we nuke LA Harbor, as the team on the research vessel seems to be suggesting, we lose at one blow all of the scientists who are most informed regarding the threat and capable of developing a strategy to deal with it. 2. If past behavior is anything to go by, it's not the siblings we have to worry about, but the parent. What directed the response to the reservoir poisoning? That strike was successful. Every one of those things floated up dead as a doornail. And look what it got the perpetrators. Something was out for revenge on behalf of those dead aliens. And all the evidence suggests it was the parent, which, given its size, was definitely not in the reservoir itself. We think the young are microscopic when born and migrate through groundwater channels and plumbing conduits. By inference, the net result of taking out the thing in the bay will probably be to destroy Lockheed and the nuclear refinement facilities, and probably whatever sub fired the missiles, and whoever is in the chain of command, and the White House, and, incidentally, you and me. Not that I wouldn't give my life to save my country, or the world, but who would be able to continue the fight after we're gone? 3. If any of them can acquire the capability to handle saline, all of them can. Whichever of them controls the oceans will dominate the planet in short order. And doesn't that tell you something? I'm still suspicious about the original accident. The cometary debris should have been left in the orbital lab, not brought here. Then, they were in such a rush to open the capsule. And the biologist who went berserk and flushed the sample down the staff toilet, do you really think he suddenly went crazy? The general poured herself a glass of water. Her frown suggested something stronger would have been appropriate, and drained half of it in one swig. The president stood up slowly, dawning horror in her eyes. Do you mean that they can control our minds? Yes. This is just a giant fight among siblings who run to mama with their backbiting backfires. If the others can make us kill the one in the bay, that gives them a chance to develop saline capabilities. We're gonna lose the oceans anyway. Taking out LA and the team would be crazy. What am I saying? Call that strike. Now! The president, with newfound confident, calm determination, reached for the red phone. Soft Landing by Toshiya Kamei, with music by Red Blue Black Silver, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. I think my mother was right about you, Pedro shouts against the engine noise. Laputa, our floating city, is now a small dot among the clouds as we descend towards Earth's surface. Excuse me? I snap back as icy wind rushes by my face in the open cockpit. Don't tell me you're having second thoughts. Gee, Julieta, don't bite my head off. Pedro's voice becomes shrill. Do I come off as aggressive? Maybe. As a former scholarship girl in the dog-eat-dog corporate world, I've always had to stand up for myself. On the other hand, Pedro has had it easy. Heir to his mother's conglomerate empire, he occupies a much higher rung in the social hierarchy. Don't mention your mother. Please, Pedro, not now. His mother even accused me of being a robot. Perhaps my almost superhuman competence triggered her suspicions. It still stings me to remember that. I try and focus on the instruments in front of me, yet I can still feel him, his presence. He's breathing down my neck all the time. I scan the rolling field below and search for a suitable landing spot, but my mind is still abuzz with anger. I tighten my grip on the control clutch, trying to turn us in the right direction. I grab it so tightly my knuckles turn bone white under my gloves. I feel like shouting something at him. I succumb to my rage and turn. Our gazes meet. His rich boy, ruddy complexion now annoys me, to say nothing of his sorry excuse for a mustache. Is he really the man I fell in love with? I open my mouth. Julieta! He's pointing, eyes wide, and I whip around, but we're already falling into a tailspin. My heart pounds in my ears and I squeeze my eyes shut for a moment. We hurl toward Earth like a missile. Damn it, do something! The sound of his screams fills my ears. Panic sets in and adrenaline pumps through my veins. With all my might, I steer towards a thick patch of forest. Just as we're about to slam into the ground, I bring my plane up from its nosedive and avoid a total disaster. The plane splits the trees and crashes among the shrubs, barely managing a soft landing. I wrinkle my nose at the first whiff of engine smoke. The scent of burning oil stings my eyes and I cough profusely. Pedro rubs my back with one hand and fans the smoke away with his other hand. We crawl out of the debris and sit by a rotten tree at the edge of the forest. The naked branches cast ominous shadows on the ground. The roots snake deep into the soil. Pedro looks me up and down. Blood trickles down his bare arm. He notices me looking at him. Are you hurt? He finally asks. I shake my head. Just as I thought. What do you mean? Synthetic skin doesn't break easily. Here you go again, just like your mother. I stomp my feet and gaze up with despair. The thick vines and the dark branches look ominous. When Pedro touches my arm, I swat his hand away like a bothersome fly. After a while, I regain my calm. To my relief, both of us are unharmed except for a few scratches. I gaze around. The half-baked landscape spreads before us. Even from the air, it appeared harsh and unforgiving. The world is still partially on fire and smoldering. Even so, its undeniable beauty enchants me. We must be the first people to step onto our ancestral planet in 50 years. The oblivion that still haunts Earth now threatens to swallow us. A half a century ago, humanity faced extreme weather events such as tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods. Instead of combating climate change head-on, our ancestors decided to leave Earth, if only temporarily, until the planet could heal itself. Following the initiative of an eccentric billionaire, her engineered team designed and constructed a floating city hovering in the sky. However, the city only had the capacity to accommodate 2% of the world's population. Left to their own devices, the rest eventually perished. For now, I mentally pat myself on the shoulder for not getting ourselves killed. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. So is freedom. Julieta? Pedro's voice breaks through my reverie. Maybe it was a mistake to come here. His words turn into a whine. Isn't this supposed to be paradise? Paradise. The word reminds me of the giddy excitement I felt when we plotted our elopement. We even refashioned ourselves as the new Adam and Eve. What was I thinking? I try to say something, but my voice breaks. Only a deep guttural sound comes out. I snatch the designer water bottle from Pedro's hands, gulp down its contents, and give an involuntary burp. Pedro glares at me with disapproval. Do you really think I'm a robot? I stand and dust off my pants. I remove my gloves and stuff them into my jacket pockets. I take off my cap and shake my hair loose, letting it fall to my waist. I silently tell myself that no robots have hair as smooth as mine. Pedro shakes his head and removes broken twigs and burrs from his hair. It's just that I'm not totally convinced you're human. Seriously? My face scrunches in frustration. Why did you marry me? Because I love you. You certainly don't act like it. I raise my voice. You don't trust me. You may not know it yourself. He looks me in the eye. You may be programmed to believe you're human. Thanks for your vote of confidence. I sigh. What if I'm a robot? What are you going to do about it? I'll still love you. You can be sure of that. How noble of you. I roll my eyes. The latest model is so human-like, it's impossible to tell them apart. Suit yourself. I throw up my hands. Believe whatever you want. I give up. Now what? How should I know? I glare at him. This was your idea too. You said we could eke out a living on Earth. My mother? Damn it, Pedro. My own mother's words of warning flood back to my mind. I hate to admit it, but she's right. Dating your boss's son is just asking for trouble. We foolishly expected Earth to be fully recovered, but this? Pedro gazes around at his surroundings in disgust. I'm not going back. I hate La Puta. Our city was originally christened La Puta after Gulliver's travels. However, it was later changed to La Puta, presumably not to offend the Spanish-speaking population. Back in high school, my English teacher assured us that Swift was aware that La Puta means the whore in Spanish. You mean La Puta? Pedro has the nerve to correct me. In hindsight, why would anyone leave behind everything, comfort, careers, and possessions, to venture into the unknown? All I can say is the heady elixir of love clouded our better judgment. The plane is now a heap of junk. I drag our camping gear from the debris while Pedro does nothing. Unfortunately, the food we brought from home didn't survive the crash. I remove an AI chip from the control panel and slip it into my pocket. Something tells me it may come in handy someday. A chortling brook flows nearby. The forest is quiet with no animals in sight. Even if we come across potential prey, we're too ill-equipped to catch it. To my surprise, most of the plants around us are edible. I chew the young shoots and spit them out. Pedro reluctantly follows my suit. Do you really expect me to eat this? Pedro complains. You miss your maid's home cooking, don't you? I say angrily. Pedro shrugs, ignoring my sarcasm. I put my gloves back on. I gather some twigs and dried grass. Pedro stands with his arms folded across his chest. Hey, don't just stand there. Make yourself useful. I take off one of the gloves and toss it at Pedro. I don't need it. Pedro shoves my glove back at me. Besides, it's too small for me. He holds out his hand and flexes his delicate fingers as if to say, I hate to get my hands dirty. I ignore him and go back to my task. I pull a lighter out of my pocket and start a fire. The smoldering flames flicker in Pedro's eyes. I put a pot of brook water over the fire and brew tea from dried leaves. As I nibble the starchy base of a shoot, I feel Pedro's gaze on me. A look of suspicion flashes in his eyes, just like his mother. What's wrong? Nothing. Damn it, I'm sick of you doubting me. I storm off, fuming. For the next few hours, I stay away from Pedro. It gets dark. The night chill settles over my shoulders and I shiver. Pedro steps up to me, presses himself against me, and wraps his arms around me as if nothing has happened. I recoil briefly at his touch, but he doesn't seem to notice. We cuddle together to keep ourselves warm. My resentment melts away in his embrace, if only for a short time. I tighten my grip around him, trying to convince myself I still care for him. The steady sound of his breathing is deafening in the melancholy silence of the forest. He falls asleep first, and resentment bubbles up in me again. He may be more of a liability than anything else. I attempt to shush the nagging thought, but to no avail. Still wide awake, I stare into the dark void of the unknown. The following morning, we take what we can carry and leave the forest behind. We sing songs in turn and then in unison until we stumble upon abandoned railroad tracks half buried by grass and weeds. I figure the tracks will eventually lead to the remnants of a lost civilization. After a few days of trekking across a yellow plain, I'm already sick of eating grass. I don't ask him, but I imagine Pedro feels the same. My body craves for something more. Now and then I steal a glance toward him, but his face has grown increasingly inscrutable. I doubt this herbal diet will sustain us much longer. Soon, both of us will become skin and bones. Then it'll be too late. We reach what must have been a mid-sized city. We walk through crooked streets lined with crumbling, empty buildings with boarded-up windows. "Are you hungry?" Pedro asks, devoid of genuine concern. A sinister grin flashes on his unshaven face. I fight off the urge to smack him in the face. No, I'm okay. Just checking. We step into a deserted house whose roof is caving in. A rat as big as a full-grown chihuahua stares in our direction before it slowly marches out of sight. No food is in sight. Exhausted, we sit on a frayed couch. "I love being with you," I hear myself say, but a part of me wonders if my own words are true. I snuggle next to Pedro and lay my head on the center of his chest. Your heartbeat soothes me. He remains silent. The steady sound of his heart throbs under my ear. A tingle of something akin to fear creeps up my spine. "Do you like my company?" I gaze up at him, forcing myself to look into his hopeless face. I brace myself for the worst possible answer. "Of course," Pedro finally says after a long pause. "You're the one I wanted. Doesn't matter what my mother says." His face is an enigmatic mask. I crane my neck and draw him down for a kiss. I devour his kiss like a starving animal. He tastes awful, like rust. For a brief moment, I wonder what his flesh tastes like. Most likely, salt, pepper, and a little bit of chili will do the trick. Then it dawns on me that eating is a form of love. Do I love him enough, though? My mouth waters in spite of myself. I shake away the thought as roaches scurry between our feet. In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Sibling Rivalry by F.J. Bergmann, with music by Fog Machine, and Soft Landing by Toshiya Kamei, with music by Red Blue Black Silver. Theme music by Dane Luscombe. Come visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree or online at spacecowboybooks.com. Don't forget to subscribe, and visit us on Instagram and Twitter. We'd love to know what you think of the show.